Hello. Can you please tell me your name and where you went to school and a little bit about your background?
So my name is Dr. Vanessa Villegas Selwyn. I have my PhD, and that's why there's a doctor in front of my name. It means a lot of school and a lot of knowledge got crammed inside my head at a very young age. I went to school. I went to elementary, mid school, and high school in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is down near El Paso, Texas. It's at the very bottom of in fact, first exit of I-25. That's my home. That's my home. I-25 doesn't exist past my home. So you get on I-25, go until it ends. That's Cruces. And then I went to New Mexico State University for a double bachelor's in biology and psychology. And then I taught high school for a while, chemistry, biology, and physics. And I got a master's in education and got certified to teach. But I really miss science, so I joined a PhD program here at CSU in Fort Collins, Colorado, and got a PhD in cell molecular biology with an emphasis in molecular, cellular, and integrative neurosciences. I usually just say neuroscience because no one cares about the extras. And now I'm just trying to find my way in life.
That is so much school. Every time you break it down, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I know this person. And then would you mind sharing a bit of your ethnic background?
So I was raised in a very mixed household. My mother, she is Native American, and she prefers the term Hispanic because she is in her 70s, and that is what she grew up with. I would say Latinx or Mexicano. So I was raised with the Hispanic Catholic family tradition on her side, with Native American roots. And my dad is a white German, Russian, Jewish individual from New York that decided to marry her and move down to New Mexico. So I was raised in a household with both Catholicism and Judaism, with both white and Mexicano and Native traditions. And I had to learn how to make all those things come together and become who I am and become my traditions.
And how did you take the time to, like, because that's so many different places and like some things can be conflicting, and like how did you make sense of that? And then as you went through school, well, actually answer that question first.
So it's not easy when you come from a household where everything is the same. Your parents pretty much agree. They may disagree on the little things like, well, I like Charmin versus I like quilted for toilet paper. There's always going to be the arguments.
Mm-hmm.
But when you grow up in a tradition where your family, both parents have very different ideas of God. They have very different ideas of what makes a good child. They have very different ideas of what is intelligence, what is achievement, how should achievement be treated. I would say that I had it a little hard because there would be times. A good example is when I moved schools. When I moved to fourth grade, we moved houses, and so I moved to the nice school, the rich school in town. Mm-hmm. And my dad at the time had the week off because it was high holy days for Judaism. In fact, we just had Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is coming up next week. And so he had the week off, so he was dropping me off at school. And then about a week later, he was back at work, and my mom came and picked me up. And the next day, one of the girls in my class was like, "Ugh, your nanny's so ugly." And I was like, "Nanny?" And I realized what she meant. Says, "I don't have a nanny. That was my mom." And she was like, "Ugh, you're one of those? You're Mexican?" And I said, "I'm me." I said, "I'm mixed." I said, "I'm proud of who I am." Mm-hmm. And I've had that issue on both sides. Mm-hmm. I've had the issue of like hanging out with all my friends, all the cholas, and we would speak in Spanish, and esa this and esa that, and we're just just enjoying ourselves. And then of course my dad decides to pick me up, and they're like, "Who's that white dude?" And I'm like, "That's my dad." "You're white?" "I'm me. I'm mixed."
And so what I'm hearing is a lot of like consideration for another person's like beliefs and like where they stand, and consideration of each other's feelings, like where does that come from?
I think a big part of consideration, you know, they always say walk a mile in somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So every single person in the world is entitled in some way, even if we don't want to admit it. There's always going to be someone who is having it worse than you are, no matter how bad you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And a good example of that is I had friends when I was in my PhD program. I was an advisor to a club, and one of my friends, I said something casually like, oh, well, you know, if you feel grungy, just go home and shower. And she looked at me and said, Vanessa, I don't have a home. I'm living out of my car. And in that moment, I was the person who was entitled and who was saying a reckless statement because I didn't understand that situation. I've never been homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more entitled you are, the more blind you are. I've had people tell me to my face, there's no such thing as racism anymore. There's no such thing as sexism anymore. There's no such thing as this. There's no such thing as that, because they don't experience it. As long as you are living in a world where you are not the target of hate, you don't think it exists, and you may not see what's wrong with that hate because, hey, it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to crack a joke. It's funny to call somebody words that I don't even want to use.
Right.
Because, hey, I'm just, you know, I'm just calling them that name. You know, I'm just saying, oh, hey, you know,
Blah, blah,
use
blah.
any
Yeah.
of the racist, sexist, genderist words, because it's like, oh yeah, we're just friends. Except that you are literally saying that that word is negative. If you decide to use the word red
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about a Native American, you are literally saying that they are nothing more than a slight reddened tone of only a specific group of Native Americans. So calling a Native American a redskin literally says, doesn't matter what gods you believe in, doesn't matter who you are as a person, doesn't matter if you're good or bad, you are nothing but a color, and not even the color you actually are, because all humans are shades of brown.
Mm-hmm.
You're all shades of brown. No, you're red.
And like, I am so glad that you said that, because that's something that we as a school and like just as a student body, because we're no place for hate, and just trying to get that across of like, yes, you can joke around with your friends, but there's other ways to joke around with your friends. I feel like, especially in today's society, we do need to think about how other people are feeling and where those things come from. Why is that word being used in a funny way when a lot of people are saying that it's negative? What advice do you have for people who aren't being made fun of or aren't marginalized in a certain way or in any way at all?
So I think those people need to ask themselves a question. If you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the person who is hurting others and making this world so much harder for others?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to be the person that's like, no, if I don't want somebody abusing me, why would I choose to abuse others? Why would I choose to be the bad guy? It's like every person lives their own story.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look back at your life, are you going to say, yeah, I was the villain? I was the villain. I decided to make everyone cry. I decided to take things from people. I decided to make them feel as small as possible. I decided that their lives were worthless and only I mattered. Are you going to be that person? Or are you going to be the person that's like, hey, you just called my friend this. That's not okay. Oh, I was just joking. Sure, okay, I'm going to joke and use a slur word towards you. Oh, I don't like that. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not comfortable being called those slur words, if you are not comfortable having your things taken, having your body abused by others, don't do it to others. And if everyone's like, oh, it's okay, a lot of times when people say it's okay, it's not. You, as a human, have power over others in how you act. If you see somebody struggling, a good example is prior to COVID, when it was still safe. If I saw somebody crutching and I was driving, I'd pull over and say, hey, you seem to be struggling. Do you want a ride? If I was at a grocery store, and this happened to me, I guess, back on Saturday, I was at a grocery store, and this old man was trying to get the box of pancakes off that top shelf, and he couldn't reach. I said, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" And he just looked at me, he was like, "Thank you." So I got the box, I gave it to him, and he was so grateful. In that moment, I can choose to be a villain, or I can choose to be a hero. In that moment, I got him exactly what he needed, and he didn't have to stretch, he didn't have to stress. He could go on with his life in a happy, positive world. Or I could have just laughed and walked on by, and he would have suffered because I chose to be callous. I chose not to step up. And in general, I like stepping up. That doesn't mean everyone does, but I choose that path.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I appreciate you so much. I love you so much. And I hope that everyone heard what Dr. Selwyn said and heeds it. Thank you.
Bye.